Over the course of the 20th century, the appetite for mind-altering chemicals in America spread like a brush fire. The prohibition on these drugs in the United States and elsewhere created a huge demand which criminals and corrupt government actors in Mexico were more than willing to fill. The black markets created by prohibition flourished, propelling poor, everyday criminals in Mexico into the stratospheres of power. These men are the first cartel bosses of the drug trade. They are the Godfathers of Mexico. El Cubano de Tijuana, Alberto Sicilia Falcon. Alberto Sicilia Falcon was born in Matanzas, Cuba, on the 30th of April in 1945 to Cristobal Sicilia and Hilda Falcon Sicilia. Growing up under the corrupt Batista regime, Sicilia Falcon grew up extremely poor and from an early age committed many petty crimes. He would be arrested several times for vandalism, disorderly conduct, and sodomy. In his early teens, it is rumored that he took part in the Cuban Revolution against the Batista regime. However, when Castro began executing criminals and political dissidents, some of which were associates of Sicilia Falcon, he made plans to flee Cuba. When he turned 15, Sicilia Falcon left Cuba for the city of Miami, Florida, in the United States. It is in Miami where Sicilia Falcon would make contacts with the CIA and allegedly assist them in their attempts to overthrow Castro. It was also rumored that during his time in Miami, he engaged in male prostitution and was first introduced to the cocaine trade. He would become one of the early cocaine smugglers and distributors in Miami in the late 1960s and was a forerunner of the cocaine boom in the city. Sometime in the late 1960s, Sicilia Falcon moved to Tijuana, and once there, he immediately began smuggling contraband into the United States through the port at San Ysidro, California. He would also begin smuggling marijuana into the United States. Using his illicit profits from smuggling, he would also develop legitimate enterprises such as exporting seafood and purchasing land for mining operations, among other things. During his run in Tijuana, Sicilia Falcon would mentor a pair of young brothers named Ramon and Benjamin Arellano Felix, who smuggled consumer electronics and marijuana into the United States at the time. Later on, the brothers would go on to become powerful cartel bosses in their own right, founding the Arellano Felix organization, also known as the Tijuana Cartel. Sicilia Falcon was now wealthy and had more money than he could possibly spend. However, his ambition was not sated. Sicilia Falcon truly began to make a name for himself after meeting a man named Juan Mata Ballesteros. Through Mata Ballesteros, he began to import large amounts of cocaine from Central and South America. It was rumored that he was also one of the first smugglers to utilize tunneling under the border. By the mid-1970s, Sicilia Falcon dominated the city of Tijuana and most of the smuggling routes into California. He is alleged to have been making upwards of $20 million per week at his peak. He also had exquisite tastes and was known to only travel in one of his 4 luxury Rolls-Royce automobiles. He was also a known bisexual and threw lavish drug-fueled parties at his many different mansions, which he owned in Mexico as well as Europe. Many of the wealthiest and most famous people in Mexico attended these parties. He was alleged to have even had an affair with the famous actress and singer from Mexico, Irma Serrano, who was also known as La Tigresa. However, Sicilia Falcon was not a pushover or soft by any stretch of the imagination. He ordered several murders and was said to have a psychopathic personality, giving him a ferocious reputation during this time. It is also alleged that Sicilia Falcon rekindled his relationship with the CIA. It is rumored that after some clandestine meetings between Sicilia Falcon and the CIA, a deal was struck allowing him to continue his drug smuggling operation in Tijuana unimpeded. In exchange, he would use his organization and contacts to move weapons shipments for the CIA to Central America in support of anti-communist revolutionaries there. This arrangement continued for some time, with Sicilia Falcon continuing to operate with impunity and weapons continuing to flow to the Central American rebels. Soon, however, elements of the United States government, including the CIA, began fearing Sicilia Falcon was also working with the Soviets. To add more fuel to the fire, the DEA began zeroing in on his smuggling operations in Tijuana, Mexico, as well as his distribution network in California. It seemed as though Alberto Sicilia Falcon's days were numbered. On July 2, 1975, he was arrested by Mexican commander Florentino Ventura and DEA agent Pat Gregory at his luxurious residence in the exclusive Colonia de Pedregal in the country's capital of Mexico City. Sicilia Falcon was interrogated harshly to the point of torture, during which it is alleged that he confessed to his cooperation with the CIA in smuggling arms to Central American rebels and also to being the head of a drug empire that stretched from Mexico City to the streets of California. After his tortured confession, Sicilia Falcon was immediately transferred to the dark and feared Lecumberri prison, which was also called El Palacio Negro. This prison was built in 1900 under the dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz and was one of Mexico's most brutal. The Colombian poet Alvaro Mutis describes his time there after being imprisoned in 1958. According to Mutis, the living conditions within the prison were extremely dangerous due to the guards' poor treatment of inmates and that beatings and torture was common throughout the prison. He also mentions that corruption within the prison walls was widespread. It was also at El Palacio Negro where Sicilia Falcon would make both of his daring escape attempts. The first attempt seems almost too incredible to believe. Legend has it that soon after Sicilia Falcon arrived at the prison, a helicopter flew over Lecumberri and a rope was thrown down from the helicopter in the middle of the yard to the astonishment of both the inmates and the guards. Sicilia Falcon would grab onto the noosed rope and was then flown out of the prison to his freedom. This freedom would be short-lived, as he would be recaptured a mere 3 days later. His second escape, while less fantastical, was just as incredible. On April 26, 1976, Sicilia Falcon escaped from Lecumberri a second time through a tunnel that was 80 centimeters wide and 40 meters long. According to press reports of the time, this tunnel led from his cell to a house he had purchased, which was located on Calle de Tercera Cerrada in the Juan Polinas neighborhood of Mexico City. Inside both the tunnel and the home, tools, steel plates that supported excavation, electrical installation, wheelbarrows, gloves, saws, drills, picks, shovels, bars, oxygen masks, acetylene tanks, saws, as well as mattresses were found. Also located in the home was a detailed layout of the prison and a blueprint for the creation of the tunnel. His second escape could have possibly been the inspiration for the tunnel built and used by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman Lorea to escape from prison 40 years later. Along with Sicilia Falcon, his bodyguards Alberto Hernandez Rubi and Jose Bejar also escaped from the prison. Former lawyer Luis Antonio Zuccoli Bravo also escaped with Sicilia Falcon. This second escape caused a scandal that shook the highest levels of government, as it was evident that there had been corruption throughout the prison, from the guards all the way up to the prison administration. According to the press at the time, local law enforcement had also been on the take. This scandal led to the closure of Lecumberri prison, which until then had been considered by many to be an impossible fortress to escape. 4 days later, Alberto Sicilia Falcon was recaptured inside a home located at 73B La Quemada Street in the Narvarte neighborhood of Mexico City. Subsequently, he was transferred to the maximum security prison of La Palma in the municipality of Almoloya de Juarez. There he would spend the next 23 years. In the TV series Narcos Mexico, Alberto Sicilia Falcon was killed by police on the orders of Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo. This assured Felix Gallardo's takeover of Tijuana and the Mexico-California border. In real life, however, Sicilia Falcon's end was much less dramatic. Sicilia Falcon was released from prison in 1999, where he disappeared from public view. It is rumored that he passed away from a stroke in 2011. While the end of his life did not fit the drama needed for television, what is a fact is that during his time, Alberto Sicilia Falcon got to the top of the narco underworld and was truly one of the original godfathers of Mexico.